Hey guys, tonight we're going to talk about something that's been gnawing at the edge of your soul every time your alarm goes off and your bones creak like an old wooden ship. You drag your feet through another day, eyes dry from the fluorescent lights, your smile stapled on like a name tag. You tell yourself you're just lazy, but let's be honest. You're not. You're tired. Tired in a way that coffee can't fix, that weekends can't rescue. You're not broken. You're burning out. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're still awake, post your location and local time in the comments. I want to see just how far and wide this little late-night crew stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through your apartment, letting your bag fall to the floor with the grace of a sandbag dropped from a balcony. It doesn't bounce. Neither do you. Your shoes stay on a little too long because even untying them feels like a decision that demands a council meeting. You didn't do anything wrong today. You just did too much. Or maybe you did very little, but under the weight of that inner pressure to do everything. Your phone buzzes. Group chat. Something about a meeting you forgot. Your stomach dips. It always dips when you're reminded how often you disappoint people lately, even when you don't mean to. You're not out partying. You're not watching 8 seasons of some obscure series. You're just zoning out. Breathing through a fog. This isn't laziness, it's collapse. Let's be clear, laziness is not the word you're looking for. Laziness suggests indifference. But you care, deeply. You care so much it hurts. That's the problem. You carry it all until your soul limps. Ancient Greeks had a word for this, aesthesia. A kind of spiritual fatigue, where you want to care but you're too drained to act. Monks in the desert used to fight it with psalms. You fight it with microwave meals and podcasts you half hear. You sit on the couch, phone in hand, scrolling aimlessly. You think, if I could just get a spark of motivation. But the spark doesn't come. Not because you're lazy, but because you're soaked in the water of stress, fatigue, and overstimulation. Try lighting a match underwater and see how well it goes. And guess what? The people who made it seem like you should be able to power through? They're tired too. They just don't talk about it. Or worse, they monetize it. Hustle culture is the only cult where burnout is the initiation ritual and the reward is more work. Remember the Industrial Revolution? Historians still argue whether it advanced society or just rebranded human suffering with a steam engine. But you? You weren't built to wake up to an alarm, commute in traffic, answer emails at red lights, and keep smiling because Karen from HR brought cupcakes. You were built to walk, forage, sit by fires, nap at noon, and maybe throw a spear now and then. Your body misses that. Not the spear part, well, maybe, but the rhythm of rest and action. Your limbs ache not because you're out of shape, but because you haven't let them rest on purpose in so long. Rest without guilt. Imagine that. Rest that isn't a stolen moment, but a sacred one. That used to exist, you know. In ancient Mesopotamia, whole days were structured around ritual and recovery. But now? Even our weekends are pressurized. Brunches, errands, catching up, as if we're all in a race we never signed up for. You glance at your planner. Pages of intentions, most of them unchecked. You used to think planning would give you control. Now it feels like a monument to broken promises. But maybe that's not on you. Maybe it's on a system that rewards output and punishes pause. A system where being still feels like rebellion. And rebellion feels exhausting. Want a quirky little fact? Sloths sleep less than you do. Around 10 hours a day in captivity, but in the wild? Just 6. And they're not stressed. They just know how to vibe. You, on the other hand, haven't really vibed since that Tuesday in 2018 when you finished your to-do list and found inner peace for 3 minutes before another email hit. You're not lazy. You're carrying mental tabs open from conversations, expectations, half-formed dreams, and 3 side projects you swore would be just for fun. You're buffering. Loading. Processing. Like an old laptop that sighs every time you open another browser tab. And no, closing those tabs isn't always the answer. Sometimes the answer is unplugging and letting the battery rest. You stretch, half-heartedly. Your back cracks. That used to be scary. Now it's just part of the soundtrack of adulthood. You think about how many times you've heard, "just push through." From bosses. Parents. Podcasts with aggressive hosts who wake up at 5 a.m. to drink seaweed smoothies and run marathons before sunrise. You can barely make coffee without checking the expiration date twice. But here's the twist, even the high performers get tired. They just hide it behind productivity apps and sponsored recovery routines. Exhaustion is democratic, it doesn't care if you're a CEO or a barista. It creeps in. It takes. It dims. You yawn again. The soft hum of the fan begins to lull you, slightly. And maybe, for once, instead of fighting that pull towards stillness, you lean into it. You admit, you're not lazy. You're exhausted. Profoundly. And just admitting that, is step 1. You wake up, but not really. Your eyes open, your alarm screeches, and your hand slaps around like a blind squid searching for the snooze button. Victory. Silence. But the weight in your chest didn't snooze. It rode the night like a shadow and settled deeper by morning. You sit up and sigh. Another day. You already want it to end, and it hasn't even started. You make your way to the kitchen like a zombie in sweatpants, unshowered, unshaven, and unconvinced. But there it is, waiting loyally, the coffee machine. Your modern altar. You press the button, and the machine huffs to life like an old dog reluctantly waking up. The smell hits first, comfort in vapor form. Then the warmth in your hand, the jolt in your bloodstream. Capitalism's favorite handshake. The caffeine doesn't ask how you slept. It doesn't care if your soul feels like wet cement. It just revs your engine enough to look presentable on a Zoom call. Productivity is satisfied. Barely. Because in this economy, your worth is often measured by your output. Your ability to keep up, to grind, to say yes even when your tank is scraping empty. And we applaud that. We reward the most exhausted people with titles and corner offices and maybe a fruit basket on their work anniversary. Back in the 1800s, during the Industrial Revolution, factories operated on shifts so punishing that even children worked 12-hour days. Historians still argue whether those grueling labor models advanced society, or just dressed up slavery in a necktie. Fast forward to now, and somehow we're still high-fiving each other for pulling all-nighters like we're in some heroic movie montage. Except the montage never ends. And there's no music. Just Slack notifications. You sip. You scroll. More content. More voices. Everyone else seems to be achieving, launching, going viral. You wonder why you're behind. Why you're still tired. Why this second cup of coffee is doing nothing except increasing the odds that you'll get anxious about your to-do list and your heartbeat at the same time. There's a secret you start to sense: coffee isn't energy. It's alone. Caffeine doesn't create energy, it masks the symptoms of depletion. It tricks your body into thinking you're ready, even when your mitochondria are in the fetal position. You're not boosting your stamina, you're gaslighting your nervous system. A strange tidbit here: Beethoven was so serious about his morning coffee that he insisted on precisely 60 beans per cup. He counted them out himself. Not 59. Not 61. Just 60. Perfectionism and exhaustion have always held hands. You shower, maybe. Or you rinse the parts that smell. Let's not pretend. Time is short, energy is shorter. You stare into the mirror, unsure whether that's a pimple or just a shadow under your skin. The reflection doesn't lie, you've been powering through for too long. Like a candle you forgot to snuff out. Half melted, still upright, still pretending it's fine. The corporate world has this weird ritual, celebrating the early bird. The ones who get in before everyone else. As if waking up before sunrise makes you a better thinker. Truth is, productivity doesn't belong to any clock. But the grind culture doesn't care about your circadian rhythm. It cares about emails, spreadsheets, output. And if your brain happens to shut down after 2 p.m., well, better drink more coffee. You sit down to work. Notifications begin their assault. Dings, pings, pop-ups. One message says, "Just checking in." You flinch. Why does that phrase feel like a threat now? Like someone's peeking over your shoulder, waiting for proof of life. Or worse, proof of productivity. Remember when you used to dream of this job? You thought it would be fulfilling. That you'd have purpose, autonomy, a cool desk plant. Now you're Googling how to fake being productive in Teams while your plant turns brown out of protest. In ancient Rome, leisure wasn't a guilty pleasure. It was a sign of freedom. The word odium meant peace, time to think, to read, to walk. Only slaves didn't have leisure. Now, we've flipped it. If you're resting, you're suspicious. Lazy. Not ambitious enough. As if burnout is some elite club you need to buy your way into with your health. Historians still argue whether modern work schedules truly maximize productivity or just keep us busy enough to forget we're miserable. Because that's the trick, right? You don't have time to be miserable if you're always busy. Another alert pops up, a meeting that could have been an email. You consider pretending your Wi-Fi is out. You fantasize about quitting. But instead, you click join, put on your camera face, and practice nodding like you care. There's something almost comical about how normal this all feels now. Like it's perfectly okay to schedule 14 back-to-back meetings and still answer emails on your lunch break. But when you really pause, when you peel back the layers, you see the cracks. You see how this pace isn't built for human beings. It's built for robots. And even robots need software updates. You check the clock again. Only 9:37 a.m. feels like lunch. You yawn. Your boss emails asking if you've had time to circle back. You try not to scream. Instead, you open another tab. Another document. Another cup of coffee. You're not even chasing success anymore, you're just running from collapse. The mug is empty. Again. You look down at your hands, shaky and restless. You wonder, is this what being an adult is? Perpetually tired, slightly caffeinated, and always behind? You remember when you were a kid and adults looked so competent. Now you realize they were probably just as confused, just quieter about it. Maybe the truth is this, coffee culture isn't about flavor. It's about ritual. A way to armor yourself for the day. To tell your body, we're doing this. Again. And that's okay, for now. But you also start to wonder, what happens if you stop? If one day you let yourself SL. The corporate world has this weird ritual, celebrating the early bird. The ones who get in before everyone else. As if waking up before sunrise makes you a better thinker. Truth is, productivity doesn't belong to any clock. But the grind culture doesn't care about your circadian rhythm. It cares about emails, spreadsheets, output. And if your brain happens to shut down after 2 p.m., well, better drink more coffee. You sit down to work. Notifications begin their assault. Dings, pings, pop-ups. One message says, "Just checking in." You flinch. Why does that phrase feel like a threat now? Like someone's peeking over your shoulder, waiting for proof of life. Or worse, proof of productivity. Remember when you used to dream of this job? You thought it would be fulfilling. That you'd have purpose, autonomy, a cool desk plant. Now you're Googling how to fake being productive in Teams while your plant turns brown out of protest. In ancient Rome, leisure wasn't a guilty pleasure. It was a sign of freedom. The word odium meant peace, time to think, to read, to walk. Only slaves didn't have leisure. Now, we've flipped it. If you're resting, you're suspicious. Lazy. Not ambitious enough. As if burnout is some elite club you need to buy your way into with your health. Historians still argue whether modern work schedules truly maximize productivity or just keep us busy enough to forget we're miserable. Because that's the trick, right? You don't have time to be miserable if you're always busy. Another alert pops up, a meeting that could have been an email. You consider pretending your Wi-Fi is out. You fantasize about quitting. But instead, you click join, put on your camera face, and practice nodding like you care. There's something almost comical about how normal this all feels now. Like it's perfectly okay to schedule 14 back-to-back meetings and still answer emails on your lunch break. But when you really pause, when you peel back the layers, you see the cracks. You see how this pace isn't built for human beings. It's built for robots. And even robots need software updates. You check the clock again. Only 9:37 a.m. feels like lunch. You yawn. Your boss emails asking if you've had time to circle back. You try not to scream. Instead, you open another tab. Another document. Another cup of coffee. You're not even chasing success anymore, you're just running from collapse. The mug is empty. Again. You look down at your hands, shaky and restless. You wonder, is this what being an adult is? Perpetually tired, slightly caffeinated, and always behind? You remember when you were a kid and adults looked so competent. Now you realize they were probably just as confused, just quieter about it. Maybe the truth is this: coffee culture isn't about flavor. It's about ritual. A way to armor yourself for the day. To tell your body, we're doing this. Again. And that's okay, for now. But you also start to wonder, what happens if you stop? If one day you let yourself SL. You don't rest. Not really. You pause. You fake it. You flop onto the couch like a deflated pool toy, but your mind? Still sprinting. It's like trying to nap in a theme park next to a roller coaster. You scroll. Of course you scroll. Your thumb knows the way, muscle memory sculpted by years of TikToks, tweets, and tiny dopamine hits. You're not even enjoying it anymore, you're numbing. Every new post is either a productivity guru yelling about morning routines or someone moving to Bali to escape the matrix. Neither feels real. Both make you feel worse. You look around. Dishes in the sink. Laundry half done. Tabs open on your laptop like portals to alternate universes you no longer have the energy to visit. There's a tab about meal prepping. Another about burnout symptoms. One is still loading. You don't remember opening that one. Probably something hopeful. Historically, rest was sacred. The Jewish Sabbath, for example, was a full day where absolutely nothing was done. No work. No labor. Not even lighting fires. It wasn't optional, it was divine instruction. Now, rest is something we have to schedule. And even then, we feel bad about it. We tell people, I needed a lazy day, like we're confessing a crime. As if rest must be earned through suffering first. Historians still argue whether we've genuinely evolved in our relationship to time, or just replaced old gods with newer, more caffeinated ones. Because rest now often comes in apps. Breathing apps. Sleep trackers. Guided meditations with celebrity voices whispering, "You're doing great," while your brain quietly screams, "Am I though?" Your phone buzzes again. A calendar alert. Your lunch break. You consider standing up but remember you already ate half a granola bar in bed. That counts, right? You glance at your to-do list. It's grown. Hydrate. Email Jim. Finish report. Text mom. Meditate. Go outside. Read one chapter. Delete social media, again. There's even one that just says, "Be better," like your inner critic decided to write passive-aggressive goals now. You wonder when doing less became a threat. Why slowing down feels like failure. Why it's easier to collapse from overwork than admit you need a nap. Somewhere in all this, you flash back to school. Remember that one kid who got straight A's, joined every club, did 2 sports, and still volunteered on weekends? Everyone said, "Wow, they're going places." But no one asked where they were going, or if they even wanted to. Achievement was the finish line. Nobody mentioned what happens after you cross it and realize you're still tired. By the 1950s, America started selling the dream of balance, perfect homes, smiling families, a pie cooling on the windowsill. But those images were mostly ads, not reality. Women were exhausted. Men drank too much. Kids were told not to talk about feelings. And the idea of rest? Only for weekends, and only if you mowed the lawn first. We carry that legacy. The idea that burnout is a badge of honor. That you can't say, "I'm exhausted," unless you're also juggling 3 side hustles, studying for a 2nd degree, and training for a marathon. Fun fact, the word burnout was first used in the 1970s by psychologist Herbert Freudenberger. He used it to describe the emotional collapse of overworked medical professionals. People who cared so much, they forgot to care for themselves. Sound familiar? You stretch, sort of. It's the lazy kind. Just enough to convince your spine you tried. You consider a walk. Your body says yes. Your brain says, later. You compromise by opening the weather app and then closing it again. It's too sunny. Or too cloudy. Or just too much. You lie back down. Maybe this is rest. Maybe not. Your jaw is still tight. Your shoulders, tense. You can't remember the last time you felt loose, unguarded. Like a cat in a sunbeam. Now you sleep like a hunted animal. Half listening, half dreaming, always ready to bolt back into duty. Historians still argue whether modern burnout is a new phenomenon or just a renamed version of old human fatigue. Some say we've always been tired. That cave people were exhausted too, just from predators and famine instead of performance reviews and 2% raises. There's a humming in the background. Not your fan this time, your brain. You realize you're not thinking thoughts, your thoughts are thinking you. They're driving now. You're just a passenger holding the snacks. Your phone lights up again. Screen time report. Oof. You wince. You've spent more time today with your phone than with your own emotions. You wonder what it would feel like to unplug. To just be. The ancient Greeks had a word, ataraxia. It meant tranquility of the mind. Not just the absence of noise, but the absence of disturbance. A state where nothing tugged at your peace. That's the vibe you want. But your reality is more like mild chaos with brief naps. You think about taking a real break. Like, an actual one. No devices. No guilt. Just sitting. But even that sounds exhausting. Because here's the truth they never put on the posters: rest is hard when you're wired for productivity. Doing nothing feels like doing it wrong. You sigh again. You've been sighing a lot lately. It's your body's version of rebooting the system. Like a dog shaking off water. You wonder if anyone else sighs this much. Then you realize, probably yes. They're just quieter about it. We all are. Maybe that's why burnout feels so lonely. Not because no one else is tired, but because we're all pretending we're fine. We're all trying to be the duck, calm on the surface, paddling like mad underneath. You finally stand up. Stretch again. This time with a little more effort. A joint cracks. That's your reward. You walk to the window. Look outside. Nothing profound. Just a tree. A street. A cloud that kinda looks like a rabbit. You feel the smallest tug of something, presence. It's not bliss. Not yet. But it's honest. You realize you haven't taken a deep breath all day. You try now. In. Out. Not bad. You do it again. Your shoulders drop. Your eyes soften. You don't feel fixed, but you feel a little more, here. That's enough for now. You wander into the kitchen. Not for a meal, just to exist in a different room. Sometimes you do that. Relocate your body as if changing scenery might change your mood. The fridge hums like a tired roommate. You open it, stare, close it. Nothing new's appeared since the last time you checked, 5 minutes ago. But hey, sometimes miracles happen. Just not today. You catch your reflection in the microwave door. You look fine. Not great, not awful. Just fine. That word again. I'm fine. The world's most exhausted lie. You've said it 100 times, maybe more. At work, in texts, even to your dentist. Everything's fine. And they nod, as if it's enough. You remember when fine was something to aim for. Back in school, a B+ was fine. Now it feels like you're expected to be A+ at everything, all the time, without showing effort. Even your days off have to be Instagrammable. A hike. A brunch. A productive book read in a minimalist nook. You're not resting. You're curating. Let's rewind. Ancient Rome. Yes, even the Romans got tired. Wealthy elites had odium, a form of leisure that wasn't laziness but intentional recharging. Think long walks, philosophical chats, and time spent in gardens doing absolutely nothing productive. Not because they'd earned it, but because rest was seen as necessary for wisdom. Fast forward to now. Your idea of leisure is catching up on chores while a podcast about optimization plays in the background. You multitask your me time. Fold laundry while meal prepping, while texting, while half-watching something that won an award. It's not leisure. It's performance art. Historians still argue whether the invention of electricity permanently wrecked our rest. Before light bulbs, people slept in 2 chunks, first sleep and second sleep, with a period of wakeful rest in between. They'd pray, write, even visit neighbors. Now, you wake up at 3 a.m. and assume something's wrong with you. Then scroll yourself back to unconsciousness. You sit on the floor for no reason. Cold tiles. Weirdly grounding. You think about how animals just lie down. A cat doesn't justify naps. A dog doesn't feel guilty for basking in the sun. But you? You need a spreadsheet and a 3-step plan to take a bath. There's a fly buzzing somewhere. You track it with your eyes. Tiny chaos with wings. You envy it for a second. No meetings. No expectations. Just existence, until it doesn't. Then you swat at it, because of course you do. Burnout isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just silence where joy used to be. It's the slow fade of enthusiasm. You used to love drawing, or cooking, or dancing in your socks to weird playlists. Now those things feel like chores. Or worse, memories. You remember being a kid. Running full speed just for fun. Collapsing in the grass, dizzy and happy. When did rest stop feeling like reward and start feeling like failure? When did you start needing permission to breathe? Your phone dings again. It's a self-care reminder. Oh, the irony. You swipe it away without reading. It feels performative. Like an AI trying to love you. Sweet, but missing the mark. Fringe fact, in the Victorian era, people used to take rest cures. Doctors would prescribe complete isolation, no visitors, and horizontal bed rest, especially for women. The treatment often caused more harm than good. Writer Charlotte Perkins Gilman famously escaped one and wrote the Yellow Wallpaper about the experience. So yes, rest has been medicalized, dramatized, and misused for centuries. But you're not locked in a Victorian attic. You're just tired. And a little scared. Because what if this exhaustion never ends? What if it's not a phase but your new normal? You brew a cup of tea. Not because you crave it, but because the ritual soothes you. Boil. Steep. Sip. Something old-fashioned about it. Ancient, even. You imagine monks doing the same centuries ago, in cold stone chambers. Steam rising like tiny prayers. They didn't call it self-care. They called it life. You lean on the counter, watching the steam. You let the warmth hit your face. You breathe. There's a pause in your chest, a small moment of not doing. Of being. You remember something a friend once said, you're not lazy. You're grieving the version of you that could do it all. That lands. Hits somewhere below the ribs. You're not lazy. You're adjusting. That's different. Historians still argue whether industrial capitalism invented our current concept of laziness. Before factories, people worked when needed, sowed, harvested, repaired. They rested when the land did. Now rest is measured in hours and guilt. If you rest too much, you're lazy. If you don't rest at all, you're grinding. Either way, someone profits. You carry your tea to the couch. Sit. Sip. The room hums with stillness. For once, you don't fill it. You let the silence stretch. Let your breath find its own rhythm. You blink slowly. You feel the gravity of your own body pulling gently downward. Maybe this is enough. Not a spa day. Not a vacation. Just 10 minutes of stillness where you don't owe anyone anything. Not even yourself. Your brain, of course, tries to interrupt. You should be doing, you shut it down. Not with force. With kindness. Later, you whisper. Not now. You look around the room again. Same dishes. Same clutter. But something's shifted. You're no longer trying to conquer the mess. You're just sitting beside it. Coexisting. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. Even rivers pause at the bend. Even the sun rests beneath the horizon. You let your eyes close. Just for a moment. You drift a little, just enough to lose track of time. Then you open your eyes again. Same room. Same quiet. But the tea's colder now, and something in you feels softer. Not fixed. Not cured. Just softened, like a crumpled shirt warmed by sunlight. You roll your shoulders. One pops. You sigh, it's almost satisfying. But then comes the reflex. You reach for your phone. Again. The endless scroll. News, updates, photos of people looking suspiciously energetic at 7 a.m. on a weekday. Someone just bought a house. Someone ran a marathon. Someone you vaguely remember from high school now sells protein powder and calls it legacy building. And there you are, in pajamas you haven't changed out of, mentally debating if washing your face counts as a productive act today. You laugh, softly. It's not funny, but it kind of is. Because you know this script. You've lived it before. The loop of shame, the mental math of, have I done enough to deserve rest? It's like your brain is a courtroom, and you're always on trial for being tired. Quirky fact, the term lazybones first popped up in the 16th century. People used it like a joke, but also as an insult. It stuck because we still carry this weird, ancestral guilt around idleness. Even our language betrays us. Killing time. As if time were something we're supposed to wrestle into submission. You turn the screen off and set the phone face down. Just for now. You're not rejecting the world. You're just choosing not to broadcast yourself for a little while. There's something oddly powerful about that. You stretch your legs out and stare at the ceiling. Funny, ceilings. No one decorates them anymore, except maybe hotel lobbies or cathedrals. You wonder what it would feel like to lie under a painted dome every night. Stars, maybe. Clouds. Something to remind you that life isn't just checklists and deadlines. Historians still argue whether Leonardo da Vinci actually slept in 20-minute intervals, 6 times a day. Polyphasic sleep, they call it. Some say he was a genius optimizing every waking minute. Others say, yeah, probably not sustainable, buddy. But the myth persists, because we romanticize exhaustion when it comes with a side of brilliance. And yet, here you are. Regular tired. Not genius tired. Just, please don't talk to me before coffee, tired. But this moment, this nothing moment, it matters. You're starting to notice the difference between being off and being present. They're not the same. Off is collapse. Present is a choice. You think about monks again. Or nuns. Or any group of people who intentionally build silence into their day. The great silence in monasteries begins at nightfall and lasts until morning. No small talk. No noise. Just breathing, being, and eventually, sleep. Imagine that. A whole society structured around the idea that the soul needs quiet time. You flick the lamp switch off. Not because you're going to sleep. Just because the shadows look better that way. The room becomes a softer version of itself. Like it, too, is finally unclenching. You remember when your to-do list was just one thing: finish school, maybe eat a snack, maybe ride your bike till sunset. Now it's digital, endless, color-coded, and somehow regenerates overnight like some evil spreadsheet hydra. Burnout doesn't show up with flashing lights. It sneaks in. It wears your clothes, lives in your calendar, uses your voice to say, I'm fine, when you're anything but. But here's something no one tells you. You don't have to earn the right to rest. You were born with it. Like breath. Like heartbeat. You exist, therefore you deserve moments of peace. Fringe historical tidbit: in 1910, a hotel in San Francisco offered a rest room for stressed businessmen. Not a bathroom, a literal room with padded chairs, no clocks, and calming wallpaper. It cost 5 cents to sit in silence. Think about that. People used to pay for quiet. Now we have noise-canceling headphones and still can't escape the mental buzz. You look down at your feet. Wiggle your toes. Grounding, they call it. A little ritual to remind you, you're here. Still here. You recall a random conversation, weeks ago. Someone said, maybe burnout isn't the fire going out. Maybe it's being stuck in smoke with no way to breathe. And you nodded, too tired to reply. But you think about it now. All the smoky hours. The invisible weight pressing down on your shoulders like a memory you can't shake. You shift positions. Not much. Just enough. Like your body's trying to say, okay, maybe we can try again. Gently. You wonder what your 8-year-old self would think of you. The way you sigh at emails. The way you celebrate cancelled plans. The way you apologize for existing, sometimes. That kid would probably squint and say, you seem cool, but kinda tired. You smile. It's a start. Then, for no real reason, you hum. Just a tiny tune. Half a song. It sounds like nothing. But it's yours. A sound that isn't for productivity. It's not content. It's not monetized. It's just, there. Like you. You close your eyes again. Maybe not to sleep. Maybe just to rest. The difference matters. And as your breath slows, you think, maybe I'm not broken. Maybe I'm just human. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough for tonight. You wake, but not all the way. It's that liminal state, your body still wrapped in the weight of blankets, your mind slowly climbing toward consciousness like it's emerging from underwater. There's no alarm. Just the slow stretch of time, yawning out in front of you like a road in the fog. And here's the kicker, you're not in a rush. That's almost suspicious, isn't it? No deadline slamming into your morning like an avalanche. Just stillness. Maybe a faint bird call. Maybe the rumble of a distant garbage truck that sounds surprisingly like a lullaby when you're half asleep. Your brain does its usual checklist. Heartbeat? Still going. Email? Ignored. Schedule? Irrelevant, for now. But then, of course, the whisper creeps in. That familiar guilt. That inner voice going, shouldn't you be doing something? Ah yes, the ghost of productivity past. Always showing up uninvited. Here's the thing, though, you're not lazy. You're just constantly swimming upstream in a world that mistakes stillness for failure. Capitalism never taught us how to pause without shame. If you're not moving, you're losing, at least that's the message. So we run ourselves ragged trying to prove we're allowed to breathe. Mainstream historical fact time. In the 1800s, during the height of the Industrial Revolution, factories ran on rigid shifts that treated human beings like machines. The concept of the weekend didn't even exist for most people. It wasn't until labor unions fought hard, and sometimes violently, for workers' rights that the idea of time off even entered the conversation. And still, more than a century later, we have to explain why we're tired like we owe someone a receipt. You pull the blanket closer. The fan buzzes low, a white noise lull like distant ocean waves. You think about how many nights you've fallen asleep with the weight of expectation on your chest. How often you've played therapist to your friends, employee of the month at work, emotional lifeguard to family, and somehow forgot to be kind to yourself. The burnout isn't from laziness. It's from effort you never got credit for. You remember that time you pushed through a flu to make a deadline. Or when you stayed up till 3 a.m. helping someone else study, even though you had your own exam at 9. Or how about every time you said, I'm okay, when you were actually, deeply, undeniably not okay? Historians still argue whether the ancient Roman concept of odium, leisure, reflection, peace, was truly practiced among citizens, or if it was just something philosophers wrote about while everyone else toiled. Either way, the idea that rest could be noble was once considered worthy of debate. Now, it's an afterthought. An indulgence. So let's flip the script. What if rest is not a reward, but a right? What if burnout isn't weakness, but data? A signal that something's off balance? Maybe, just maybe, exhaustion is not your fault. Maybe it's a perfectly reasonable response to an unreasonable set of expectations. You sit up. Slowly. Your body cracks and creaks like an old wooden floor. You stretch, arms overhead, eyes squinting against the soft morning light. That's progress. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. You shuffle to the kitchen, still swaddled in that half-asleep daze. You start the kettle. Tea again. Or maybe coffee this time. No judgment. The ritual matters more than the liquid. Quirky tidbit: in Japan, there's a concept called inamuri, the art of being present while asleep. It's totally socially acceptable to nap in public if it shows you've been working hard. On a train? Fine. At your desk? Admirable. Fall asleep at a party? You're committed. Imagine that, a culture that equates rest with dedication, not sloth. You pour your drink and stare into the steam. The wisps curl like fingers, like thought bubbles rising from your mug. For once, you don't rush them away. You check your phone. Not doom scrolling, just a glance. A message from a friend. No crisis, just thinking of you. Your chest tightens a little. The good kind. That reminder that you're not invisible. That someone sees you, even when you don't post. You reply with a sleepy emoji and set the phone down. You decide, intentionally, not to open your email yet. The world can wait. Outside, the sky does its moody thing, part sun, part cloud, full vibe. You crack the window open. Just enough for a breeze. The air smells faintly of rain and concrete and someone else's breakfast. It's weirdly perfect. You sit back down. Sip slowly. No agenda. Just being. And being is enough. You think about those ancient bathhouses in Rome and Turkey, where people would spend hours doing nothing but relaxing, talking, soaking, existing. No laptops. No meetings. Just bodies and water and warmth. You wonder if anyone ever left one of those places feeling like a failure. Probably not. Maybe we need modern bathhouses. Emotional ones. Digital-free zones where people just recover. You glance at your to-do list. It's there. Still looming. But it doesn't win today. Not yet. Instead, you pick up a pen and scribble on the back of an old envelope. Not a task list. Not even a journal entry. Just a word. A single, sleepy, hopeful word, okay. Because you are. You don't notice the exact moment your brain turns on like a flickering street lamp, but it happens somewhere between your last sip of lukewarm tea and the soft plop of your body sinking into the couch. It's quiet. Not just around you, but inside, too. And that's rare. Your inner narrator, usually a caffeinated squirrel on a spinning wheel, has finally shut up. Blessed silence. You stare at nothing in particular. The ceiling? A patch of light dancing on the floor? A houseplant that's somehow alive even though you definitely forgot to water it? Doesn't matter. It all feels like part of the same blurry dream called being awake while not doing anything. The guilt creeps in again. That toxic whisper, you should use this time. Be productive. Make something of yourself. Oh, sweet voice of capitalism disguised as motivation. You again. But you ignore it this time. Because right now, you're performing a quiet rebellion. You're doing nothing, on purpose. And that's actually something. Let's get a little historical. Did you know that during the Tang dynasty in China, around the 7th to 10th centuries, the concept of su, or emptiness, was celebrated in poetry and art? Scholars would retreat into nature not to produce but to exist. Just sit beside a mountain. Stare at the moon. Maybe write a haiku if inspiration struck. If not? That was fine, too. Emptiness was a virtue, not a shortcoming. Historians still argue whether these scholars were truly lazy sages, or just elite introverts with trust funds and time, but either way, their legacy reminds us, reflection isn't wasted time. It's compost for the soul. You let yourself melt into the cushions, the fabric warm and familiar. Your mind begins to wander, not frantically, but curiously. You think about how exhaustion isn't just a physical thing. It's emotional, mental, even spiritual. A weariness so deep, it echoes. It's like your soul's been carrying a backpack full of unpaid bills, unspoken worries, half-remembered dreams, and that one email you forgot to respond to 7 weeks ago. You keep lugging it around, hoping no one notices the straps digging into your shoulders. But now, just for a moment, you've taken it off. Dropped it on the floor. Not lost. Just paused. You stretch your legs out and flex your toes. Why are human toes so weird? Little phalanges trying their best to stay relevant. You wiggle them in acknowledgement. Thanks for holding me up, awkward gremlins. You glance at your phone. Not to check anything. Just because muscle memory makes your hand twitch. You catch yourself. Set it back down. That's 2 wins in one morning. Someone give you a trophy. Or, better yet, a pastry. The breeze shifts. Cooler now. You wrap a blanket around your shoulders like a cape. Like royalty. The queen of rest. The duke of doing nothing and liking it. You wonder what your royal crest would look like. A napping sloth riding a cloud, probably. Quirky tidbit of the day, sloths can hold their breath longer than dolphins, up to 40 minutes. Why? Because their heart rate slows drastically when they relax. Imagine that. Your heart literally telling the world, shoo. I'm on break. You take a breath. A deep one. The kind that fills your lungs and pushes your ribs out. The kind you forget to take when you're bracing for life all the time. Funny, isn't it? How you've trained yourself to tense constantly. To be alert. Ready. Like you're living inside a video game where danger might leap out at any second. And all the while, your body's quietly begging, please just let me breathe. You think about the last time you felt rested. Not just, had a day off, rested, but truly, cellularly rested. The kind where your skin glows, your eyes smile before your mouth does, and your brain feels like a warm bath instead of a tangled power cord. Can't remember? Yeah. That's the point. Burnout doesn't always look like collapse. Sometimes it's just blankness. Like someone turned down your contrast settings. You don't cry. You don't scream. You just fade. Slowly. Invisibly. You remind yourself that your worth isn't measured by productivity. You are not an assembly line. You are not your LinkedIn. You are not your GPA, your follower count, or the number of unread messages you still haven't replied to, and might never. You are a person. Tired, yes, but not broken. You lean your head back. Your body sinks further into the couch like it's made of memory foam and warm soup. The world softens around the edges. Your thoughts stretch out into longer, lazier shapes. And you wonder. What if we taught kids that rest is a skill? That it's okay to take naps even if you're not in preschool? That doing nothing isn't wasting time, it's saving it. Like putting coins in a quiet little bank account called your sanity. You close your eyes. Just for a second. Maybe longer. You imagine a classroom where rest is an actual subject. Homework includes cloud watching. Exams are graded on psi quality. Recess lasts until your cortisol levels drop below panic mode. You smile. Eyes still closed. The sun shifts. Shadows move across your skin like soft, silent dancers. The day continues, without you having to race it. That's the gift. Time doesn't always need to be chased. Sometimes, it just wants to sit next to you and be still. You stay like that for a while. Not asleep. Not quite awake. Just resting. Your eyes open slowly, not because you're ready, but because the light shifted and your eyelids caught on curiosity. You're still wrapped in your blanket royalty robe, still cocooned in that small pocket of silence you've claimed like a sleepy explorer charting unknown inner territory. No one's conquered this space but you. You sit up, barely, and glance at the clutter around the room. Not chaos, just entropy. A book face down on the armrest. A half-drunk mug of something herbal. A sock that somehow escaped the laundry basket last Thursday and has been living its best independent life ever since. You feel the smallest twitch of shame. But then, you stop yourself. No. Not today. Because here's the truth you're finally starting to believe: you are not lazy. You are running on fumes. And no one makes their best choices when running on emergency reserves. Not kings. Not scientists. Not even squirrels. Take Isaac Newton, for example. He didn't exactly invent gravity in a frenzy of hustle. Historians still argue whether the famous apple actually hit him in the head, or if that was just poetic flair. But what is true? The man literally retreated to the countryside during a pandemic, sound familiar, and let his thoughts wander for months. He wasn't in a lab. He was in a field. He was bored. He was quiet. And out of that silence, the universe cracked open a secret. You glance at the ceiling again. No apples falling here. Just your thoughts. They trickle in, not panicked anymore, not demanding. Just curious. Like cats peeking around corners. You begin to ask yourself softer questions. Not, what should I be doing, but, what's really draining me? Not, why can't I keep up, but, why am I expected to? And the big one, what if I stop trying to be everything for everyone? That one sticks in your chest like a warm pebble. It sits there. Heavy. Honest. Your phone buzzes, and for once, you don't reach for it. You imagine someone texting, "Are you okay?" And you imagine replying, "No." But also, "Yes. I'm letting myself exist." Imagine that as a status update. Currently existing. Do not disturb. You wander toward the kitchen, your feet padding softly like your soul's testing gravity again. You open the fridge. Cold air kisses your cheeks. There's a leftover slice of something deliciously unimportant. You eat it straight from the container. Royalty doesn't wash dishes right now. And here's something else that quietly blows your mind: the modern obsession with morning routines didn't come from some timeless wisdom. It was industrial-age marketing. As capitalism needed a well-oiled workforce, the idea of early rising as a virtue got cranked up to 11. Suddenly, sleeping in was sinful. Naps were for losers. And if you weren't already journaling, jogging, and juicing by 6 a.m., were you even trying? But quirky fact alert. Winston Churchill, who led a country through literal war, took a 2-hour nap daily. In his bed. Fully changed into pajamas. Midday. He insisted it made him sharper, not lazier. Same with Leonardo da Vinci, allegedly a fan of polyphasic sleep, meaning short naps sprinkled across the day like creative confetti. Historians still debate whether that's genius behavior or just insomnia dressed up in Renaissance fashion, but the point holds: rest isn't weakness. Sometimes it's strategy. You slide the fridge shut and exhale. That kind of deep, chest-sinking breath that leaves your shoulders noticeably lower. Then you wander to the window and rest your forehead against the glass. Outside, the world spins on. Cars. Birds. People doing people things. You watch them with the fascination of someone who's momentarily stepped off the ride. You don't feel behind. You feel separate. Like a ghost in comfy pants. And honestly, you're fine with that. There's something healing about witnessing life without performing in it. Like a theater actor watching a show they're not in for once. Just observing. Just breathing. You let your fingers tap softly on the glass, as if playing a slow, sleepy piano. And in that quiet, a memory surfaces. That time you powered through a full week of stress, school, work, family, whatever chaos was trending, and still apologized to someone for not doing enough. You practically bled effort, and yet you felt guilty. Like you owed the world more than you had. That's burnout's cruelest trick. It makes you think your limits are a character flaw. But here you are now, doing something radical. You're listening. Not to your to-do list. Not to your email inbox. But to that tiny, exhausted voice inside that usually gets drowned out. It doesn't want more caffeine. It doesn't want motivational quotes. It wants permission. To stop. To be. To rest. So you give it. You walk back to your couch throne, sit down, and let your spine melt into cushions like warm wax. You wrap the blanket around yourself again like a final form. Level 10 coziness. Power unlocked, peace. And you think, maybe this is what healing looks like. Not always dramatic. Not fireworks or breakthroughs. Just small, quiet choices made over and over. Choosing to pause. Choosing to feel. Choosing to soften when you're told to harden. You pick up your book, not to learn or impress, but because the act of turning pages feels like a ceremony. Like reclaiming attention from the digital noise. You might only get through 2 paragraphs before your mind wanders. That's okay. Your brain deserves grace, too. The sun is lower now. Gold and honey on your skin. Your breathing slows. Your body, though still tired, starts to trust you again. And as your eyelids dip like curtains at the end of a play, you think. I may be exhausted, but I'm not lazy. And that truth feels better than any productivity hack ever could. Your body stays curled on the couch as the day outside slips quietly into evening. Light bleeds through the windows, softer now, bluer, like the world is finally exhaling with you. There's something ceremonial about twilight. Like nature saying, okay, let's stop pretending we're machines. You let your hand dangle off the edge of the blanket and your fingers brush the floor, grounding you, not metaphorically, just literally. Sometimes you forget how good wood feels. How nice cool tile can be. It's silly, but there it is, the world is full of texture, and your body craves all of it when it's not just racing through. You notice your breath again. Slow. Unhurried. It's weird how foreign that feels, right? Like slowing down takes more effort than running on adrenaline. But you're practicing. You're learning to live without the buzz. And somewhere in the back of your mind, there's still that low whisper of guilt. Asking if you've done enough today. If you're allowed this stillness. If this counts as living. But guilt doesn't pay rent here anymore. You've evicted it, remember? Because what you're really doing right now is metabolizing stress. Digesting burnout. Slowly, gently. Just like how trees drop their leaves, not because they're dying, but because they need to conserve. The shedding is the healing. And speaking of trees, did you know that in ancient Babylon, workers were legally required to take days of rest, called Sabbaths, sometimes even enforced by lunar phases? No productivity apps. No hustle culture. Just mandatory downtime, sanctioned by the cosmos. Historians still argue whether those Sabbaths were religious, political, or practical. But one thing's clear, even thousands of years ago, people knew you couldn't go full throttle forever. Imagine trying to run a chariot non-stop. You'd be eating dust by lunchtime. Your body knows this. That's why it's whispering now instead of shouting. It's been trying to get your attention for months. The headaches, the forgetfulness, the random mid-sentence dropouts. You blamed distraction. Maybe it was grief in disguise. Even the way you keep losing track of time, standing in front of the fridge, forgetting what you opened it for. Or scrolling through a screen, looking for something unnamed. That isn't aimlessness. That's fatigue. Deep, cellular-level fatigue. And the thing is, you've been adapting to survive it. You've become a master of micro-recoveries. You know how to sneak in 5 minutes of peace between Zoom meetings, how to cry in the shower without anyone hearing, how to fake fine with emoji combinations that do all the heavy lifting. You've learned to make your burnout palatable to others. Cute, even. But now, alone here, blanket around your shoulders like a cape of softness, you realize, you don't want to be a high-functioning burnt-out hero anymore. You want to be whole. Even if that means being slow. Even if it means letting some things go unfinished. Even if it means taking naps that feel like rebellious political statements. You wander to the bathroom now, barefoot and brain fuzzy, brushing your teeth not because it's bedtime, but because you crave the ritual. Minty foaming simplicity. A signal that you still care for yourself. Your reflection stares back, and for once, you don't critique it. You just look. Tired eyes, sure. But there's something softer in them now. Something that wasn't there before. Maybe it's acceptance. Maybe it's defiance. Maybe it's just the deep recognition of, I have nothing to prove tonight. You light a candle. Not for mood. Not for TikTok aesthetics. Just because it's a small flame in a big world, and somehow that feels like enough. The way it flickers reminds you of your own energy, imperfect, inconsistent, alive. And here comes a quirky tidbit for you. In medieval France, monks used candles as timekeepers. One candle burned down over a specific number of hours, and that was how they knew when to pray or eat or sleep. No clocks. Just wax and wick and faith. Historians still argue whether this made their lives more peaceful or more rigid, but the idea of measuring time by light? Kind of beautiful. No alarms. No digital chimes. Just the slow, inevitable drift of fire into darkness. You glance at your phone again. Still buzzing with notifications. Still blinking like a needy pet. You don't open it. You let it sit. Because right now, you're learning that not everything requires your immediate attention. You don't need to reply to every ping. You don't have to solve every crisis before 10 p.m. You're not the manager of the universe. You're a human being who deserves to dissolve into silence sometimes. You settle back on your bed now, not in preparation for sleep, but just to feel horizontal. To let gravity do her thing. You stretch your legs long and wide and pretend you're taking up a whole football field. You become an empire of stillness. Your eyes close. And in the gentle darkness behind your eyelids, you picture a life not built on productivity, but on presence. Where the measure of success is not your to-do list, but how deeply you feel joy. How often you laugh, how gently you speak to yourself, how bravely you say no to things that drain you. You imagine mornings without alarms. Afternoons with tea and long walks. Evenings lit by candle and rest, not deadlines. It doesn't feel like fantasy. It feels like remembering. Like a truth you've always known but buried under shoulds. Tonight, you are unburying it. Tonight, you are resting not because you earned it, but because you exist. And that is reason enough. Your eyes blink open for no reason, and for once, you don't check the time. It could be midnight. It could be 4 in the morning. The hour doesn't matter. What matters is this stillness, thick, velvety, undisturbed. The kind of quiet that wraps itself around your limbs like a weighted blanket made out of moonlight. And in this silence, a thought floats to the surface: maybe you're not broken. Maybe, just maybe, what's been dragging you down isn't a flaw in your character, but a wound. An untreated, misunderstood wound that's been scabbing over with coping mechanisms. Sarcastic texts. Ghosting your inbox. Emotional buffering with 3 back-to-back episodes of whatever Netflix calls comedy these days. You're not lazy. You're healing. Slowly, unevenly, beautifully. It's like this: if someone pulled their hamstring, you wouldn't call them lazy for limping. But when your mind limps, your soul limps, people expect you to jog anyway, smiling, preferably. Bonus points if you do it in an inspirational Instagram caption. You chuckle softly at the thought, enough to wiggle the mattress. Because, wow, isn't that the game we've all been playing? Hustle and pain, package it as #resilience. But you're waking up from that dream now. Or maybe into a better one. Like that time in ancient Rome when citizens would declare a justicium, a legal suspension of all normal operations during crisis or mourning. Shops closed. Courtrooms emptied. Everything paused out of respect for collective grief or upheaval. Historians still argue whether this made the empire stronger or exposed its fragility, but the idea remains profound. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a society can do is nothing. On purpose. And here you are, your own little empire of neurons and nerves and memory, finally calling a personal justicium. You're allowed to pause. You're allowed to do less, feel more, and resist the modern myth that your worth is tethered to your output. You shift under the blanket, one leg peeking out because, yes, you're one of those temperature chaos people who can only sleep if your foot dangles into the abyss. It makes you feel brave. A little ridiculous. But mostly human. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? Being human. Not superhuman. Not machine. Not even high performer right now. Just a heartbeat wrapped in skin, trying to feel okay for one whole day in a row. You think back to earlier, how even brushing your teeth felt like a ritual, not a chore. How lighting that candle reminded you of monks and wax clocks. Of time measured by glow, not guilt. You're collecting these small moments now. Like sea glass. Each one, proof that you're capable of slowing down. Of rewriting your story. Even if it happens one tired page at a time. Even if the pen trembles in your hand. And here's something odd but oddly comforting. In 19th century Japan, there were nap competitions among poets. Yes, really. It was called inamuri, or sleeping while present. The more elegantly one could fall asleep in a meeting or social gathering, the more one was respected, not mocked. It was seen as a sign that you were working so hard elsewhere, you deserved rest wherever it found you. Historians still argue whether this was genuine cultural admiration or just a way to avoid confrontation, but honestly, doesn't it sound like a dream? To be seen resting, and instead of being judged, you're honored. You lie there, staring at the ceiling in the dark, and you let that fantasy stretch across your imagination like a projected film. You, walking into a coffee shop, eyes heavy, and someone says, "You look like you've been trying your best. Want to sit? Want to rest?" No catch. No billable hours. No toxic positivity. Just permission. It doesn't seem so far-fetched anymore. Not when you start offering it to yourself. You shift again, this time onto your side, arm tucked under your cheek, the way you did as a kid when you fell asleep in the back seat after long car rides. Those golden hours when you didn't even have to try. When sleep just took you. That's your template now. Effortless being. Uncomplicated peace. And maybe tomorrow there will be emails. Maybe the to-do list will still glare at you from the fridge like a passive-aggressive roommate. But you're not afraid of that. Because tonight, you're building something quieter. A resilience made not from pushing through, but from knowing when to pause. When to protect your energy. When to stop watering dead plants. You've begun to notice what doesn't feed you anymore. The conversations that drain you. The obligations that make your stomach twist. The endless performance of being fine. You're choosing to opt out of burnout culture, not dramatically, not with a manifesto, but with small, quiet refusals. One more minute in bed. One less tab open. One breath, fully taken. You don't need to earn that breath. You just need to feel it. And somewhere in your chest, something unlocks. Like a rusty hinge that finally gets a drop of oil. You feel it, a tiny release. Like your nervous system whispering, thank you. Not for doing. But for not doing. Because exhaustion isn't weakness. It's wisdom. It's your body saying, let's not die for this spreadsheet. You smile again. That sleepy kind of smile that pulls up slow, with no energy for teeth. Because here's the truth you're finally letting land. You don't exist to be efficient. You exist to be alive. And alive, my friend, can mean sleepy. Can mean still. Can mean lying here, eyes half closed, breathing with the rhythm of the house. There's no productivity metric for this moment. No KPI for peace. And yet, this is the most valuable thing you've done all week. Just be. You drift further into that in-between place where thoughts are less like words and more like weather. Floating in and out, brushing across your consciousness like a breeze through an open window. You don't need to catch every one. You just let them pass. One lands anyway, the weird realization that you haven't asked yourself what you want in a long time. Like, really want. Beyond the knee-jerk answers, sleep, coffee, quiet. Deeper than that. What kind of life are you even trying to build? It's funny how burnout strips away those questions. Not by answering them, but by making them feel irrelevant. Like you're on a treadmill with no controls, and all your energy goes towards staying upright. Not dreaming. Not choosing. Just maintaining. But you're off the treadmill now. Sort of. At least mentally. You're still here, still breathing in this dim little pocket of peace. And that means it's safe to wonder again. What if you stop trying to optimize your day like it's a CPU? What if joy isn't a reward for productivity, but a precondition for it? It's radical, sure, but not new. Even as far back as the Renaissance, thinkers like Michel de Montaigne wrote entire essays about the value of doing nothing. Wandering thoughts. Idle hands. That was the point, he argued, to allow the self to grow in the empty spaces. Historians still argue whether this made him a brilliant ahead-of-his-time philosopher or just a rich guy who liked long naps in the orchard. But the idea stuck. There's value in the pause. There's magic in the absence of striving. And somewhere, under all the screens and scrolls and hustle-porn videos, you know this. You've always known it. Your body knows it too. That's why it shuts you down sometimes. The fatigue. The sudden tears for no reason. The migraines that show up like rent collectors. Your nervous system keeps sending those messages. You just didn't have the right frequency tuned in. Until now. You feel it more than understand it. Burnout isn't just tiredness. It's betrayal. Of your own limits. Of your needs. Of your softest, smallest self, the one you keep hiding behind performance. You betrayed them every time you said yes when your gut screamed no. Every time you forced a smile when your insides were begging for silence. But no shame, okay? You were surviving. And that matters. That deserves respect, too. You've been your own emergency generator for years. Of course you're running low. Of course you're glitching. You've powered through storms you never had a manual for. You've functioned on praise and panic. And now, finally, you're wondering what it feels like to function on presence. So you lie still, like a cat in a patch of sun, no urgency. Just breath and heartbeat and gravity. Maybe this is healing. Maybe this is the real flex. Funny how capitalism turned everything, even self-care, into another competition. Skincare routines with 7 steps. Journals that track every mood. Biohacking your way into a better morning. It's all noise. But rest doesn't have to be fancy. You can't win at being rested. Sometimes it's just closing your eyes and admitting, I don't want to be a project tonight. I just want to be a person. You think about those weird little jobs from the past, the ones that only existed because someone, somewhere, decided rest was essential. Like the knocker-uppers in industrial England. Real people paid to walk around with long sticks and tap on workers' windows before alarm clocks existed. They made sure you got up on time, because the system couldn't afford your rest to go unchecked. Historians still argue whether they were a quaint solution or a creepy symptom of how deeply labor had invaded personal life. Either way, the message was clear: sleep was a problem to be solved. But not here. Not now. Not for you. For once, your rest is no one's inconvenience. It's your rebellion. Quiet. Private. Sacred. And it's working. You're starting to hear yourself again, not the voice that edits every sentence into a brandyable thought, but the whisper that wonders how your feet feel against the sheets. That small voice that says, this moment is enough. You breathe in, deep and slow. Let it fill your chest, then fade out in a sigh that sounds like release. Not defeat. Not drama. Just letting go. You don't need to be profound tonight. You don't need a breakthrough. You just need a break. And so you give yourself one. Here, in the dark, with no audience. Because the truth is, the real you isn't lazy. Never was. The real you is tired of performing okayness. The real you is sick of being judged by a world that confuses burnout with laziness and hyperproductivity with value. You don't have to earn rest. You were born with the right to it. You hear that? You don't have to earn it. And no one else gets to revoke it. Not your boss. Not that inner critic that sounds suspiciously like your high school chemistry teacher. Not even the version of you that believed burnout was just part of growing up. You're rewriting that now. One breath at a time. And no, it's not linear. You'll still have days where coffee doesn't help. Days when the dishes don't get done. Days when your body is a stubborn brick and your thoughts feel like static. That's okay. Healing doesn't care about timelines. It just cares that you showed up. And look at you. Lying here. Showing up for yourself. Being honest in the quietest way possible. You can feel your body softening into the mattress now. Muscles loosening. Joints melting. Like all your atoms just agreed to surrender the fight. You are enough, exactly like this. You always were. You don't remember exactly when you started keeping score. But somewhere along the line, your days became math problems. How many emails, how many hours, how many steps, how many productive minutes. It's like you got handed a spreadsheet instead of a life. And somehow, despite the formulas and checklists, you always came up short. Never quite did enough. Never quite became enough. But tonight, you let the math go fuzzy. You're not counting. Not calculating. Not trying to justify your own existence with data points. You're just lying here, listening to the soft rustle of air in the room. Letting your brain defragment, like those old desktop computers humming late into the night. You think about how ridiculous it is that rest even needs defending. That we've built entire vocabularies around deserving it. Earned time off. Guilt-free relaxation. Self-care that requires a 5-step routine and a receipt. As if being a living thing wasn't enough justification. It's not your fault, though. You've inherited a culture that confuses stillness with failure. That worships momentum. That rewards the illusion of control. But control is just a trick of the light. Even Julius Caesar, arguably one of history's busiest men, took long, luxurious naps between battles. Historians still argue whether it was tactical brilliance or sheer exhaustion that made him fall asleep before key Senate votes. Either way, he didn't treat rest like a reward. He treated it like strategy. Meanwhile, you're expected to schedule your burnout around a 9 to 5. And if you break? Well, maybe you just weren't resilient enough. That's the lie, isn't it? That burnout is a moral failure. When really, it's just physics. No machine runs forever without maintenance. No mind thrives in constant hyperdrive. You remember a weird fact someone once told you, that dolphins sleep with one half of their brain at a time. Literally. One hemisphere powers down while the other stays alert, so they don't drown. That's you, isn't it? One side always watching. Even in sleep. Half rested, half braced. But you're not a dolphin. You don't have to be hypervigilant to survive. Not here. Not tonight. You can let both halves rest. Even the part that scans for judgment. Even the part that catalogs every mistake and stores it like emotional receipts. You breathe deeper. Slower. Let your stomach rise and fall like a lazy tide. There's no lesson to squeeze from this. No productivity hack to extract. Just this moment. This inhale. This delicious exhale. You start to feel the strange luxury of being unremarkable. Not in a sad way. In a freeing way. You don't have to be exceptional right now. You don't have to fix the world, impress your therapist, or write a caption that changes lives. You just get to be a person. Tired. Real. Breathing. You think of the monks in Japan who rake sand gardens for hours, perfect concentric lines that will be erased the next day. They don't do it for praise. They do it because presence is a practice. And because the pattern doesn't have to last for it to matter. Historians still argue whether the original Zen gardens were spiritual tools or just a convenient way to keep monks from losing their minds in isolation. Either way, the message lingers: beauty doesn't have to endure. It just has to be witnessed. So you notice the beauty here. In the way the sheets bunch softly behind your knees. In the faint buzz of electricity behind the walls, like a secret lullaby. In the quiet defiance of letting your body sag without apology. You're allowed to fall apart gently. To unravel without a crisis. To melt, rather than break. You think back to those moments you ignored, the ones your body whispered through tension headaches and clenched jaws. Little warnings. Soft protest. But now, here in the stillness, you hear them differently. Less like reprimands, more like invitations. Rest isn't weakness. It's intelligence. It's choosing sustainability over spectacle. It's saying, I'd rather be whole than admired. You wake, not with a jolt, but with that soft mental flutter, like a thought stirring before your eyes even open. But you stay still. You don't chase it. You let it pass like a cloud. Your body, once always poised to react, starts to believe it's safe again. Safe enough to be slow. To be inefficient. To take up space without a to-do list strapped to its back. You let your jaw unclench, again. Because yeah, it crept back in. You can almost laugh. Even your attempts to rest have deadlines. Somewhere along the way, exhaustion became your love language. Overgiving. Overfunctioning. Over-explaining. You weren't lazy. You were just fluent in survival. But tonight, you feel yourself starting to translate. There's a new voice arriving, just beneath the old one. It doesn't shout. It doesn't shame. It says things like, you've done enough for now, and, maybe the world won't fall apart if you rest. It's unfamiliar. But you're listening. You remember reading about how, in 17th century France, nobles used to take 3-hour breakfasts. 3 hours. That's not a meal, that's an act of rebellion. Historians still argue whether those marathon meals were for digestion or pure flex, but either way, those powdered wig folks knew how to linger. To lounge. To stretch time until it sighed and gave in. And here you are, rushing through every bite, every moment, every breath. It's not your fault. You were raised inside a pressure cooker. Your productivity was praised more often than your presence. You learned to equate worth with usefulness. But you're not a utility. You're a person. An ecosystem. And ecosystems don't perform. They just exist. Interconnected. Beautiful. Messy. Whole. You start to think about what your burnout has tried to teach you, not in that Instagram graphic kind of way, but in the quiet curriculum your body's been running behind the scenes. Lesson 1, you are not a machine. Machines don't cry from being misunderstood. Machines don't need music or skin-to-skin contact or starlight. You do. Lesson 2, saying yes to everything is a silent no to yourself. Yeah, that one stings a little. Because how many times did you nod when you wanted to scream? How many polite texts did you send instead of resting? How many weekends did you trade for approval you didn't even want? And the final lesson, the one you almost missed. Your exhaustion isn't proof of failure. It's proof that you care. Deeply. Relentlessly. Too much, sometimes. You burned out because you tried. You tried to hold everything, fix everything, be everything. And somewhere in all that trying, you forgot how to be anything, for yourself. So tonight, you let that go. Not forever. Not perfectly. But just for now. You stretch your toes against the blanket. Wiggle them like antennae feeling their way through sleep. The silence hums. It's not empty. It's full of your return. You think about how caterpillars dissolve inside the chrysalis. Not transform, dissolve. Into a goo. A biological soup of unknowing. And from that goo, they rebuild. Historians still argue whether the creature retains memory of its caterpillar life, but some studies suggest it does. That even inside the chaos, some part of identity clings on. So maybe this part of your life, the burnout, the breaking down, it isn't an ending. It's the goo. Unmaking. Unknowing. And eventually, becoming. You're not behind schedule. You're mid-metamorphosis. And goo is allowed to rest. You remember that weird medieval tidbit, that people back then used to sleep in 2 phases, first sleep and second sleep. They'd wake up in the middle of the night, not in panic, but on purpose. To read, talk, pray, even visit neighbors. We've trained that out of ourselves. Replaced gentle wakefulness with shame spirals. But maybe what you call insomnia is just your body remembering its ancient rhythms. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just remembering. You inhale again. And again. Not with effort. But like the breath is happening to you. Like air is a gift you forgot you never had to earn. You feel your skin soften. Not the surface, deeper. That softening where your soul stops bracing. Where your heartbeat isn't racing a deadline, just drumming a lullaby. You smile, barely. Not because anything's solved. But because you've finally stopped negotiating for permission to rest. And that's a beginning. The kind that doesn't come with fireworks. Just stillness. Just the knowledge that you, as you are, deserve care. Even in stillness. Even in silence. Even when there's nothing to show for it. Especially then. Your dreams these days feel less like escape and more like rehearsal. Not for productivity. Not for performance. But for peace. You find yourself dreaming of strange things, like folding laundry in a sunlit room you've never seen before. Or walking through a garden with no destination. You never rush. You never wake sweating, heart galloping. You just drift. And maybe that's your mind's way of building back its safe zones. Imagining what the real world forgot to provide. You didn't know healing could look so mundane. But it does. Turns out, recovery isn't always this grand, cinematic montage. Sometimes, it's washing your face before bed. Sometimes, it's closing 3 tabs instead of opening 5 more. Sometimes, it's declining a call and not apologizing for it. And still, some part of you wonders if you're just being lazy. Let's say it together, you're not. You're finally being honest. You're beginning to feel your actual limits, not the ones capitalism assigned you, not the ones anxiety fabricated at 2 a.m., but the ones your body quietly tried to tell you about 100 times before you listened. You're not alone in this, either. Back in 1942, the U.S. War Production Board put out propaganda to keep morale high among overworked citizens. One poster showed a woman collapsing onto a typewriter, eyes wild, and the caption read, "You can't spell victory without vigor." And just like that, overwork was patriotic. Historians still argue whether those wartime campaigns permanently rewired how Americans viewed rest, but it's hard to deny that from that point on, collapsing from exhaustion became a badge of honor, proof that you'd done your part. Fast forward to now, and what do we have? Corporate wellness emails telling you to hydrate and hustle. Hustle. As if ambition should be caffeinated and chronically online. So when your body finally said no, you panicked. But no is not the end. It's the beginning of the rebuild. The gentle pushback. The self-loyalty. It's the first thing a toddler ever learns to say with conviction. No. Because it's the seed of identity. Tonight, that little seed in you. Buried under years of yes, it's stirring. You feel it as a small urge to close your eyes a few seconds longer. As a refusal to recheck your phone, just because it buzzed. You feel it when you reach for your blanket instead of another browser tab. No. That's you reclaiming ground. You remember that strange little fact from ancient Greece: some philosophers used to sleep with a rock in one hand. That way, when they started to fall too deeply asleep during meditation, the rock would fall and wake them. Somehow, we've inherited the impulse, only we don't use rocks anymore. We use phones. Notifications. Thought spirals. But maybe you don't need to keep dropping that metaphorical rock. Maybe it's okay to fall all the way into rest, into dreams, into deep non-doing. Your hand opens, metaphorical or not. You drop nothing. You just relax. And something inside you, something shy and deep, starts to believe it's safe now. There's no great revelation. No Disney-style transformation sequence. Just the mundane miracle of a heartbeat slowing. A breath deepening. A schedule emptying. You've learned that exhaustion is not a sign of weakness. It's a sign you've been too strong for too long. But now, you don't need to be. You don't need to carry every worry like a backpack stuffed with unpaid bills and unread texts and unresolved guilt. You can set it down. All of it. And yeah, it'll be there tomorrow. Maybe. But tonight, you're not its keeper. Tonight, you're just a person. Wrapped in the softness of a moment that asks nothing of you except to exist. And even that is optional. Because you've entered the part of the night where time loosens its grip. Where the seconds start to melt together, like wax pooling at the base of a forgotten candle. Even the ticking clock gets quieter here. Not because it stops, but because you stop caring. You feel your body as it really is, an ancient machine that has walked through centuries of evolution just to arrive at this precise version of tiredness. And that's kind of amazing. Because despite everything, every burnout, every overwork cycle, every "I'll rest when I'm done," you're still here. Still breathing. Still softening. Still learning to be gentle with yourself, even when the world taught you to be sharp. So tonight, let your softness win. Let the weight of the day loosen from your shoulders. Let your jaw slacken. Let your legs go heavy and your hands unclench. Let every "should" dissolve into the sheets. Let every task find its own way home, without dragging you behind it. Let your rest become revolutionary. Not loud. Not lit up. Just quiet. Just slow. Just deeply, deeply yours. Because if rest is resistance, then tonight, you resist beautifully. The air now feels thick with calm. Like molasses, slow-moving and warm, curling around your limbs as you sink deeper. Not just into the bed, but into something older than furniture, into the idea that you deserve this. That you don't have to fight sleep like it's trying to rob you of time. You exhale, and for once, the breath doesn't carry tension with it. You're not running. Not scanning. Not proving. You're just here. And here is enough. You let your thoughts loosen, like buttons undone at the end of a long day. You stop holding everything so tightly. It's okay if nothing gets solved right now. The world will spin without your input, just this once. You're not a cog in a machine tonight. You're stardust under blankets. A miracle in soft focus. And no, that's not too dramatic, it's scientifically accurate. 97% of your body's atoms came from ancient stars. Exploded, scattered, recycled. You are literally cosmic. Makes that email you forgot to answer seem a little less important, doesn't it? Historians still argue whether ancient Babylonian astronomers truly believed stars were gods or just divine messages, but either way, they looked up and saw meaning. You look inward tonight. You see exhaustion, but not as a flaw. As a signal. Your burnout wasn't just about overwork. It was about not being witnessed. About pushing and performing without pause, hoping someone would say, "I see you." Well, you see you now. Finally. In the soft glow of almost sleep, you can admit it, you've been carrying too much, for too long, for too many. And somewhere in the mix, you forgot the weight of your own name. But tonight, you remember. You whisper it to yourself, if only in thought. Not for anyone else's ears. Just yours. You remember that you're not just tired, you're healing. That your weariness is not an error code. It's a full stop. An invitation. To feel. To reset. To come back to yourself. And you're not coming back as a sharper version of who burned out. You're returning as someone entirely different. Softer. Wiser. More boundary literate. Someone who knows that quiet is not a void, it's a sanctuary. The fan hums. The room breathes. You notice small comforts, the cool side of the pillow, the way your blankets hold you like they mean it, the rhythm of your breath syncing with a kind of peace you didn't know you missed. You think about how monks in the Middle Ages used to keep night vigils. Not because they feared sleep, but because they believed nighttime held different truths. Slower ones. Ones you had to listen for. Tonight, you're keeping vigil too, not with candles and chants, but with silence and softness. Letting the truths of your body speak in sighs and stretches. Letting the lessons of burnout finish their sentences. You're not the person you were when you started this story. You're not meant to be. What matters is that you kept going. Even when going looked like lying completely still. Even when you couldn't explain you're tired. Even when you thought you were the problem. You weren't. You were the proof. Proof that something had to change. That you couldn't live indefinitely in output mode. And now, you won't. You close your eyes, not to escape, but to return. To the you that exists beneath the deadlines. To the you that's learning to rest without guilt. To the you that remembers this body is not a battleground, it's a home. And like any home, it deserves care, patience, and the occasional repainting of boundaries. You let the quiet deepen. Let it wrap you like fog around an old lighthouse. Solid. Slow. Safe. And somewhere in the fading static of your mind, a truth anchors itself. You are allowed to rest before you break. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to explain it. You just have to honor it. And now, you do. So as this story winds itself down, let everything inside you begin to slow, gently, naturally, without pressure. Let the sharp corners of your day soften. Let the urgency ebb out of your muscles, replaced by something quieter. You don't have to hold yourself up anymore. Let the bed hold you. Let gravity take over. Let the hum of the fan, the weight of your blanket, the quiet rhythm of your own breath remind you that rest doesn't require permission. Only presence. Let your breath stretch a little longer now. Inhale, hold, release. Like ocean waves smoothing out the edges of a restless shore. You've made it through. Not because you powered through exhaustion, but because you stopped fighting it. Because you listened to your body whisper what your brain tried to ignore. You're not lazy. You're just tired. And you're allowed to be. You're allowed to want soft things. You're allowed to not have all the answers. You're allowed to heal on your own timeline. You've earned nothing tonight, because this isn't a prize. It's a return. To yourself. To stillness. To something softer than the life that spun you out. So as the world blurs, and the day folds in on itself, let this be your permission slip. Sleep well. Dream kindly. Wake when you're ready.